My dad, John, doesn't like me. He always says I'm a fake, just like my mom, Sarah. He thinks I only pretend to be sad or unwell to get people to feel sorry for me. On my 18th birthday, I gave him a call. I really wanted him to come over. I said, "Please, Dad, just this one time, please come. If you don't, I don't know what I'll do. I might not make it." His voice was very cold when he answered. "So now you're even trying to make threats? Fine, then do what you have to." The call ended and a tiny, sad smile was on my face. Then, a voice inside my head, the system I lived with, said, "Mission failed. The host is going to be shut down." That was it. I passed away on my 18th birthday. In the end, John, the dad who couldn't stand his own daughter, he actually lost his mind. I'm what they call a mission executor. I started living inside of a girl named Lily when she was 6 years old. The system told me that my mission was to get her dad to spend just one birthday with her. If I could do that, the mission would be a success. At the beginning, I thought it was going to be super easy. When I looked in the mirror, I saw Lily's face. She was 6, with a round, cute face and kind eyes. When I went out, older ladies and grandmas always wanted to give me hugs and kisses. They'd say, "What a sweet girl, her parents must love her so much." But I quickly found out that wasn't true at all. The person who disliked me the most in the whole world was Lily's dad. John had been made to marry my mom, Sarah. He was the son of a rich family, the head of the Miller Group, and he was really in love with another woman, an actress who wasn't very famous. My grandpa was really angry about it. He didn't like people in show business, and he made John break up with her and marry someone he chose. That person was my mom, Sarah. John only planned to pretend to go along with it to make my grandpa happy. But Sarah really, truly loved John. She had loved him secretly for years, and she chased after him, cried for him, even stopped eating, and sometimes hurt herself. John was overwhelmed by how much she seemed to love him. Then, Sarah got pregnant, and with pressure from both families, John married her. They were married for only 6 months, and it was a very cold marriage. 6 months later, Sarah passed away while giving birth to me. John wasn't there when she died or when they had her funeral. 3 months later, he came back. The nanny brought me to him. He just looked at me for a second and said, "She looks exactly like Sarah." Then he just turned and left like he didn't care at all. By the time I was 6, I understood a lot of things. In art class, the teacher told us to draw our families. I only drew myself and the nanny. The teacher asked, "Where's your dad?" "Daddy's on the television," I said. "And your mom?" "Mommy's in heaven," I replied. The teacher paused for a second, then patted my head and went to the office to call John. "Mr. Miller, next Tuesday is Parent-Teacher Day. Could you please come and have a chat?" I heard her, and I felt a little bit of hope. Next Tuesday was also my birthday. If Dad came, that would mean he was spending my birthday with me. On Tuesday, I started waiting in the afternoon. Class after class went by, and finally, after school was over, a black, fancy car drove into the school. I looked with wide eyes, hoping. But the person who got out of the car was an assistant in a nice suit. "Mr. Miller asked me to give this to the teacher," he said. He handed a gift box and a shopping card to the teacher. He said, "This child is probably difficult and hard to handle. He's sorry for any trouble." The teacher sighed. She wanted to say that wasn't true at all. I was a good kid, I behaved well, and I worked hard in school, but the fancy car had already turned around and left. Like spending even one more second on me was a waste of time. That was the first time I realized that getting a parent's love could be the easiest thing in the world, or the hardest. I didn't stop trying. At first, I thought that if Dad realized I was a good kid, he might start to like me. So, I worked really, really hard. I got awards every semester, and they covered a whole wall, but it didn't work. The nanny sent all the good news to John, but he never said anything back. Later, some kids at school were mean to me. They laughed and asked, "You say your dad is John Miller?" "You're lying. Look at her. Does she look like the daughter of the head of the Miller Group?" "Yeah, no one ever comes to your parent-teacher meetings. I think you don't have a dad." We got into a fight and we broke the glass case near the playground. Glass went everywhere, and one of the kids picked up a piece and cut my arm. In the hospital, I heard those kids' parents talking quietly. I heard she's not his real daughter, one said. Just give them some money and that's it, another replied. Maybe we should tell the principal to kick her out. If she stays and says something, it could hurt our kids' reputations. I sat in the hospital room, not showing any emotion. It's natural for parents to want to protect their kids. I didn't blame those parents for wanting to sacrifice me so their kids could have a better future. Actually, I felt a little jealous of those kids. Suddenly, the whispering stopped. Instead, I heard surprised voices. Mr. Miller! John had come at the last minute. Behind him were his serious assistant, his lawyer, and the principal, who was bowing and nodding. I understand what you mean. This was our school's fault, the principal said, sweating a lot. We will deal with this seriously and kick out the kids who did it. John nodded, not seeming to care much. The assistant and lawyer stayed outside to deal with things while he pushed open the door to my hospital room by himself. My heart had never felt so warm. In that moment, I thought maybe the coldness between John and me was finally going away. Dad, I said, my voice shaking. But the next second, I couldn't speak, because I saw the way John was looking at me, so cold. Lily, you've grown up, he said, his voice flat. You're doing the same things your mother used to do. Much later, the nanny told me, back then Sarah had paid 2 people to bother her so she could get sympathy, and then she called John crying. How much did you pay those classmates to help you with your little show? John's dark eyes looked at me, full of a mean kind of doubt. I felt all the blood in my body go cold. I didn't. Lily, don't lie, he said. I really didn't, I cried. I couldn't prove anything. I just felt so unfairly treated. John looked at me with disappointment for a while, then said quietly, I thought you might be different from her, but it turns out you're just the same. He turned and walked away. The principal followed him, not knowing what had just happened in the room, and started praising me to John. So, Lily is your daughter. I knew it. She looks so much like you. Always getting the best grades. Her writing is really good. Kind of like how you used to write. John's footsteps stopped for a second. Then he chuckled softly. What good is that? And with that, he started walking again, getting further away. I got older, year by year. Every year, I tried everything I could think of to get John to spend my birthday with me. A few times, I almost did it. But John never came. He would have his assistant send gifts, each one more expensive than the last, and order a special cake that cost a lot of money to be delivered. Maybe in front of other people, he still wanted to look good. But he himself never came, not even once. He couldn't stand me, thinking I was just like Sarah, bad on the inside. When I was good and studied hard, he thought I was pretending. When I was in the hospital with a high fever, he thought I was faking it to get attention. No matter what I did, it was always wrong. The nanny eventually retired, and I was left alone at home. When I got tired of studying, I would watch TV. On TV, he was with Rachel and their son, Michael, on a family reality show. Rachel was his girlfriend from when he was a teenager. After my grandpa passed away, John finally got to be with her. He put a lot of money into her career, and the actress who wasn't famous before was now a big star with lots of fans. The 3 of them went on a show together, a handsome, rich father, a beautiful mother, and a cute son. It looked so nice. I was happy for Michael. He had the happiest family in the world. And Michael was indeed happy. Even though John was busy, he always found time to help him with homework, build Lego sets, and play basketball. The comments on the screen kept coming. Mr. Miller is the best dad in the world. So jealous. I wish I had a dad like that. I smiled and turned off the TV. Tomorrow was my 18th birthday. This was my last chance. If I still couldn't complete the mission, the system would shut me down. I picked up the phone and called John. He didn't answer, no matter how many times I tried, so I had to leave a message. Dad, please, you only turn 18 once. You've never been there for any of my birthdays, just this once. Can you spend it with me? Otherwise, I might not make it. After a long time, a voice message showed up on the screen. With shaky fingers, I pressed play. John's voice was cold and mean. So now you're even trying to make threats? Fine then, do what you have to. The birthday candles burned out. The flame went out for the last time. I took a fork, dipped it in the frosting on the cake, and put it in my mouth. Sweet and fluffy like a cloud. But all I could taste was sadness. "Host, time is almost up," the system said. The clock's hands were about to reach midnight. On his social media, John had just posted a new picture, a photo of Michael smiling on a golf course. The words were short, but full of love. "Spent today with Michael playing golf. The little guy's doing great. So proud of him." I thought for a moment, took a picture of my birthday cake, and posted my own message. No matter what, I still want to say thank you. Not every parent loves their child, but every child is born loving their parents. I will always love you. Goodbye, Dad. The clock struck 12. Wearing my birthday hat, I quietly took my last breath. My spirit floated out, hanging in the air. Outside the window, lights were shining in every home, while inside, my body grew colder in the dark quiet. I asked the system, "Why can't I leave yet?" The electronic voice, low and nice, replied, "Because it's not finished yet." As if to prove the system's words, 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. No one answered. The only one who could open it was lying on the sofa, not alive. The knocking got more urgent, louder and louder. "Lily!" Finally, I heard John's voice. "Open the door. I know you're home." I floated in the emptiness, watching John. He was wearing a suit, frowning, ringing the doorbell over and over. When the bell wasn't loud enough, he started banging on the door. I knew it was silly, but in that moment, I couldn't help but hope. Hope that he would open this door, that he would see my body. Would he feel even a tiny bit sorry? Even just a little. But what I hoped for didn't happen. John knocked on the door for a long time and then stepped back, his face getting colder. He picked up his phone, opened my chat, and pressed the voice message button. "Lily, is this fun for you? Who was that message for, me or everyone else? What, you think if playing the sad victim doesn't work on me, you'll tell the whole world and have everyone be mad at me? Is that what you're doing? Let me tell you, I give you food and clothes. I don't owe you anything." After sending the voice messages, John turned and walked away. He got in the elevator, his eyebrows still furrowed. Maybe he looked too scary because the little girl who got in the elevator later stood beside him for a few seconds, then started crying. The little girl was wrapped in a blanket in her grandma's arms, probably sick and needing to go to the hospital late at night. John quickly made his face relax. "I'm sorry, sweetie. Uncle's just in a bad mood because of something else. Did I scare you?" His voice was so gentle. Watching him, I thought to myself, so this is what my dad is like when comforting a child. Since as long as I could remember, he'd never comforted me. John was actually a kind man. Every year, he gave money to help poor children in faraway places. His company gave extra time off and benefits to pregnant employees. Even with a stranger's child, he showed so much patience and kindness. But when it came to his own daughter, all his kindness seemed to be locked away, leaving only coldness and impatience. In the moment, John soon managed to calm the little girl down. He called a car for the girl's grandma, and while waiting, the little girl, with her face red from fever, even started chatting with him. "Uncle, do you have kids?" "Yes," he said. "How many?" John paused for a moment. "Two," he said quietly. "A son and a daughter." So I was still considered his daughter. The car arrived, and the little girl took a candy from her pocket and put it in John's hand. "For you, Uncle," she said, smiling brightly. "Your daughter must be very lucky." She waved at John as her grandma carried her into the car. The car drove off, and John stood there holding the candy. "Your daughter must be very lucky." I saw him take out his phone and open my social media page, scrolling up and down. "What are you looking for, Dad?" "Looking for signs that I was happy?" "Don't bother, there won't be any." My posts were only visible for the past 3 days, so all he could see was the picture of my birthday cake. No matter what, I still thank you. Not every parent loves their child. Goodbye, Dad. He left my page. My chat was empty with no reply. This wasn't normal. In the past, it was always me messaging him and him ignoring me. It had never been him messaging me and me not replying. John hesitated for a moment, then opened the phone app and entered my number. But the next second, his phone rang. The caller was Rachel. "John, come home quickly. Michael seems to have a fever." John's car sped all the way home. He walked in, met by Rachel's worried face, and immediately asked, "Where's Michael?" Michael was lying on the sofa, eyes closed, with a fever patch on his forehead. John went to him. You could see how worried he was. "Michael, how are you feeling?" Michael weakly opened his eyes a little bit. "It hurts." "Where does it hurt?" "My head, it hurts so much." Michael's voice was weak, but it had a fake, dramatic sound to it, and though he said his head hurt, he was holding his stomach. John was quiet for 2 seconds, then reached out to feel Michael's arm and legs. Though there was a fever patch on his forehead, Michael's body wasn't hot at all. "Michael, are you really sick?" Michael blinked. "Of course I am." "All right," John stood up. "Then I'll take you to the hospital now. If you're sick, you need to rest. I'll give the tickets for tomorrow night's soccer game to a coworker." "No," Michael panicked, jumping up from the sofa. "You can't give them away." Realizing his mistake, Michael looked at John guiltily, trying to lie back down, but John's face had already turned cold. "Michael, you can ask Dad for anything, and if I can give it to you, I will. But I don't like children who lie. I've told you this many times." John's tone was serious, and tears quickly filled Michael's eyes. Rachel immediately came over. "Don't be so hard on him, John. He's just a kid," she said, holding onto John's arm. "I'm the one who told Michael to pretend to be sick. Blame me if you want." John's face softened. He rubbed his forehead and said quietly, "Don't be silly." Rachel pouted and rubbed her head against his shoulder, then smiled reassuringly at Michael. "All right, sweetheart, go back to your room. Mommy needs to talk to Daddy." Seeing that John was no longer angry, Michael's face lit up, and he happily went to his room to watch cartoons. Rachel pulled John to sit down. John's face hadn't completely softened. "Why did you have Michael pretend to be sick?" Rachel hesitated. After a moment, she asked haltingly, "Did you go to see that girl?" "She didn't say my name. She didn't call me John's daughter. She just said that girl. It was her way of making it clear, of implying that I wasn't part of this family." John said nothing. Rachel's voice was gentle. "I don't mind. But I'm worried about Michael. John, you're Michael's father. You know how much Michael loves you. If Michael knew that his dad was giving his love to someone else, he'd be heartbroken." There was a long silence. Finally, John patted Rachel's hand. "Don't worry, that won't happen." Rachel let out a long sigh of relief. I watched from the side, strangely feeling no pain. I had been here once before. Back then, I was still in elementary school, and John's assistant had come to my school a few times, attending parent-teacher meetings on John's behalf. The assistant felt sorry for me, feeling that John misunderstood me too deeply, so he found a way to bring me to John's house, hoping I could have a meal with them. When I was sent over, John hadn't come home yet. Michael was at his swimming lesson, and only Rachel was in the living room. Rachel was very friendly. As soon as I entered, she took my hand. "This must be Lily. You're so beautiful." In that moment, I felt a twinge of guilt because I knew I looked a lot like my mother, Sarah. Even John hated me for that, let alone Rachel, who had once lost him to Sarah. But Rachel was so kind. She smiled and got me settled in the living room, asking what I liked to eat and play with, then brought me all kinds of snacks, comic books, and game consoles. At first, I was shy, but all these new things were irresistible, and soon I was eating chocolate cookies and reading comics. Half an hour later, Michael came back. He didn't seem to mind my presence, but when he saw that I was eating his snacks and holding his comic books, he pouted immediately. Before I could say anything, Rachel quickly pulled him away. She took Michael to his room. I hesitated for a moment, then timidly walked over and knocked on the door. "I'm sorry, Rachel cut me off, smiling gently at me. "It's all right, Lily. Go read your comics. I need to talk to Michael for a bit." I had no choice but to return to the living room and pick up the comic book again. But no matter how exciting the story got, I couldn't focus. The door to the bedroom was slightly ajar, and I could see Rachel talking to Michael, who looked more and more upset, his eyes redder and redder. 10 minutes later, John came home. The moment he walked in, Michael rushed over and threw himself into John's arms, crying loudly. John was stunned. He picked up Michael, asking him over and over what was wrong, but Michael was crying too hard to answer. Rachel walked up to John. Watching Michael sob, her eyes reddened slightly. John turned to ask Rachel what had happened. Rachel glanced at me hesitantly, then sighed and shook her head without saying anything. Michael cried for 5 whole minutes. Those were the hardest 5 minutes of my life. I watched as he cried, snot and tears streaming down his face, while Rachel wept silently beside him, and John tried to comfort him. I stood there, unable to do anything but watch the second hand tick forward on the giant clock. After 5 minutes, Michael was exhausted, finally shifting from sobbing to sniffling. "Daddy," he said, clinging to John's neck, smearing snot and tears on his suit. "Lily took my snacks and comics. She wouldn't give them back. I was so scared." I stood there feeling like I had fallen into a freezing pit. I opened my mouth and said weakly, "I didn't take them." I didn't take them. Aunt Rachel gave them to me. I never take things from other kids, no matter how much I want them. In preschool, the teacher even praised me for being the most well-behaved. But I couldn't say any of that because John, while wiping Michael's nose with a tissue, shouted at me, "Shut up!" I closed my mouth. The unfairness I felt grew and grew, and I started to sob quietly. John grew even more impatient. He held Michael tighter and said to me coldly, "Are tears a weapon? First your mom, now you." I bit my lip. "Don't cry," I told myself. Michael's tears would bring him love and sympathy. Your tears would only make them hate you more. Michael was in John's arms, looking down at me. The crystal chandelier hung above, the light so bright I couldn't see his expression. After a moment, Michael turned and hugged John's neck. "Daddy," he called softly, "it doesn't matter if Lily takes my things, as long as no one takes you away. She can have all the chocolate chips, comics, and games. I just want you." After that, I never went to John's house again. He told the security guards at the gate not to let me in. That overly sympathetic assistant lost his job because of it. From then on, I understood. They were a real family, and I would never fit in. John married the woman he'd always loved, had an adorable son, and could have walked into a happy and fulfilling future. But I was this permanent stain on his life, keeping him from cutting ties with his painful past. His hatred for me was built in, let alone Rachel and Michael. It had been over 3 hours since my death. John hurriedly washed up, preparing to sleep. He had an important shareholders meeting early the next morning. But the meeting didn't happen. 10 minutes before it was set to begin, his secretary rushed in. "Mr. Miller, there's a call. It's from Lily's teacher." John had just finished 2 cups of coffee and washed his face with cold water, barely managing to shake off his tiredness. At the mention of my name, he immediately lost his temper. "Why are you reporting silly little things now? Is the projector in the conference room set up?" The secretary quickly left and John adjusted his suit collar in his office. A few minutes later, the secretary returned, seeing John pick up his car keys. "Inform the executives that the shareholders' meeting is rescheduled for the afternoon." He rubbed his forehead, exhausted. "What did the teacher say?" "The teacher said that Lily was missing. She hadn't come to class, nor had she called in sick. Her friends had texted and called her, but no one could reach her." John was silent for a few seconds in his office, then sneered. "Is this really worth calling me over for? If I remember correctly, her mother, Sarah, was also one of your students back in the day. Didn't Sarah do the same thing back then? Every time she was upset, she'd disappear, making everyone frantically look for her, only for us to find out she skipped school to chase after some celebrity." John stood up. "Mr. Lee, next time don't bother telling me about such things. I've completely given up on Lily." He reached the door, only to hear a stern voice behind him. "John!" John turned back and met Mr. Lee's commanding gaze. Mr. Lee was the most senior teacher at the school, a veteran teacher who had served as vice principal years ago, but insisted on continuing to teach and be a homeroom teacher. Both John and Sarah had once been his students. Sarah is Sarah and Lily is Lily. Mr. Lee had always been a gentle teacher, guiding his students with patience and warmth, never raising his voice. But now, he brought out the full authority of an old teacher, and his tone toward John was almost scolding. John had an instinctive respect for Mr. Lee and tried to explain, Lily is Sarah's daughter. She looks so much like Sarah. You can't deny that. John, do you remember when your mother was in prison for financial crimes and all your classmates made fun of you? John froze. It had been so long. Those painful memories from his youth had long since been buried. But now, Mr. Lee ripped them open, exposing the old wounds. I held a class meeting and gave those bullying students a stern warning. I told them that parents and children are separate individuals, and the mistakes of parents should not be borne by their children. Back then, you cried and thanked me, saying that my words had saved you. Now, 30 years later, as a parent yourself, have you forgotten all of that? John stood there, unable to speak for a long time. Lily and Sarah are not the same. They are completely different individuals. Lily is one of my best students. She is hardworking, disciplined, diligent, and never complains when wronged. She always helps her classmates when they need it. Mr. Lee spoke firmly. I am telling you this after almost 40 years of teaching. She is a truly good child. If spirits could cry, I would be crying at this moment. But I couldn't. So all that passed through me was a gust of wind, half cold, half burning. I saw John's hand hanging by his side begin to tremble. He rarely lost control like this. John, Mr. Lee's voice softened, Lily has never missed a class without notifying us. This is extremely unusual. She may be facing an insurmountable problem. At times like these, the help of outsiders is limited. I hope that as her only family, you can be there for her. The car was going almost as fast as it could, but John kept pressing down on the gas. The rearview mirror reflected his bloodshot eyes, and the GPS navigation's voice announced, Your destination is ahead. He was rushing to my home. My spirit sat quietly in the back seat, watching him. The system hadn't left. Its electronic voice echoed in my ear. Host, he's coming to find you. Do you feel happy now? I thought about it seriously, then shook my head. It's too late. I realized that in the moment before I died, I did hold some anger, hoping to see John regret it. But now, I only felt, what was the point? A text message appeared on the phone screen. It was from John. Lily, today Dad will make up for your birthday. But my birthday had already passed. Everything in the past was truly gone. John stopped multiple times on his way to my house. He wanted to buy me some gifts, along with a birthday cake. Although I had received many gifts yesterday, those were bought by his assistant using John's credit card. John himself hadn't put in any effort for my birthday. He hadn't even said happy birthday. Now he desperately wanted to make up for it. John entered cake shops and gift stores, but each time he entered, he was filled with new confusion. He didn't know what I liked. Michael liked chocolate, tiramisu, raspberry sauce, action figures, and special edition basketball shoes. But John didn't know what Lily liked. Not at all. In the end, John picked out a strawberry-flavored cake because he vaguely remembered that I seemed to like pink. When I first started first grade, the nanny had taken me to a mall where we ran into John carrying Michael. John was buying toys for Michael, needing 3 assistants to carry everything. Then, perhaps because I looked so sad standing by, John handed Michael to an assistant, took my hand, and led me to the counter, asking me what I liked. It was the first time John had held my hand. The warmth of a father's touch was so precious. I was both excited and nervous, stuttering as I looked at the shelves of toys. I was afraid that if I spent too much, the little bit of affection I'd managed to get would vanish. So, in the end, I only picked a doll. Just this? John asked. Yes, I nodded. Her dress is pink. I like pink. Now, holding a pink cake and a pile of other gifts, John entered the elevator. Even if she didn't like the rest, Lily should like this pink cake. With that thought in mind, John stepped out of the elevator. He was greeted by a crowd of people looking on and the police. The police noticed John and approached him. What is your relation to the person living in the unit 1802? John froze. What is your relation to the person living in unit 1802? The officer repeated. I'm her father. John's lips moved, and it took a long time for him to say the words. Officer, what happened? Did my daughter do something wrong? Did she... John didn't continue because the officer's tone turned serious. All right, please cooperate with us to confirm the identity of the deceased. It was the nanny who called the police. Although she had already retired, she had taken care of me for many years, and her affection for me had never faded. It's This time she came by train to take care of her daughter, who had just had a baby, and since it happened to be my birthday, she decided to visit me. She knocked on the door for a long time without getting any response. By chance, the landlord was showing the place to people who might rent it and opened the door. In the morgue, John looked at my body. Is this your daughter? He was silent for a long time before he nodded. Preliminary examination suggests a sudden heart problem. So far, we have ruled out anything suspicious. John couldn't hear what the officer said after that. Ruled out anything suspicious. No, it wasn't true. He knew who killed his daughter. Dad, please celebrate my birthday with me just once. If you don't come, I will die. The sound of my crying still echoed in his ears. Although he didn't understand how it worked, John remembered what Mr. Lee had said. Lily was never one to lie, so the person who killed Lily was her father. Lily was never one to lie. Every time she asked for help, it was real. Every time she worked hard at her studies, trying to earn his praise. Every time she was sick and in pain, hoping he'd visit her. It was all real, but he had been so fixated on his hatred for her mother that he wrote off all of those things as lies. The police watched as John left. The president of the Miller Group had no expression on his face. His eyes were empty and there wasn't the slightest hint of tears. So heartless, one of the officers thought. The rumors must be true. He really hated his daughter, not even a single tear shed for her. John stepped outside, sunlight pouring down on him. He took out his phone and opened our chat. He scrolled up, reading every message I had sent him. A cat I met on the way to school. My good grades in the midterm exams. A classmate who was sick. And the charity fundraiser I organized for them. Seeing Dad on the cover of a business magazine today and buying many copies to bring home. Dad, can you come to the parent-teacher meeting? It's okay if you can't. I know your work is important. You should focus on that. Message by message. Finally, he stopped at his own reply. The last message he had ever sent me. Then just go die. At 3 in the afternoon, the sun was blinding and cruel. That day, many people walking by saw a man in a suit, crouched at the entrance of the police station, crying until his voice was gone. John came home late that night. As soon as he walked in, Rachel approached him. Why are you home so late? I called you so many times, but you didn't pick up. Did you go see that girl again? Her tone carried an unmistakable displeasure. Just yesterday, she had pressured John to reduce contact with Sarah's child, to avoid hurting Michael's feelings. And now today, John was late again. Don't try to lie to me. I called the office and they said you skipped the board meeting. You went to that girl's school. Rachel frowned. John, whether it's skipping school or getting into early relationships, that girl isn't worth your time. She's ruining her own life. Michael is still young. He needs his father's reassurance. She's dead, John suddenly spoke. His cold voice cut through Rachel's incessant chatter. Rachel was stunned. Lily is dead, a sudden heart problem. John looked at Rachel. His expression was wooden, his throat visibly choked. Rachel took a moment to react, then slowly covered her mouth with her perfectly done hands. Oh my God, this is really... She blinked and tried hard to squeeze out 2 tears. How could this happen? John looked at her quietly. In truth, Rachel wasn't an actress known for her talent. Her acting could be described as not very good. If John hadn't invested heavily in her projects, she would have struggled to become famous. And now, even as her tears rolled down her cheeks, they only felt fake. John suddenly felt very, very tired. I'm exhausted. I'm going to sleep. But Rachel grabbed him. There was a hint of panic in her eyes. The living cannot compete with the dead. If that daughter had continued to live, John probably wouldn't have treated her any differently. But now that she was gone, so young, his guilt would only grow, and that would be bad for Michael. John, don't be too hard on yourself. You were always good to her. She died of heart disease, right? I remember Sarah had heart problems too. Maybe it runs in the family. Or maybe, could it be karma? Sarah did a lot of wrong back then, tearing us apart. Maybe this is her punishment, passing on to her daughter. Rachel was usually quite calculating, but at this moment she was too anxious. Before she could finish, John turned to her abruptly. His gaze was as cold as ice. Rachel. He spoke in a low voice. Her name was Lily. Rachel froze under his dark, piercing eyes, unable to move. You never even called her by her name. You kept saying she was Sarah's daughter, reminding me again and again, counting on my hatred for Sarah, didn't you? John had almost never shown Rachel the cold, ruthless side of himself. She was completely terrified. Without saying anything further, John left her standing there and headed towards the door. John, before Michael went to sleep, he said he hopes you can take him to play basketball tomorrow. Susan made one last desperate plea. The only answer she got was the loud slam of the door. John arrived at my apartment. He had come to help pack up my belongings. If it weren't for the fact that my spirit couldn't stop him, I really wouldn't want him going through my things. But there was nothing I could do. John was my biological father. The law said our blood connection couldn't be broken. It said that even in death we were connected. He found many things I never wanted him to see, like my diagnosis of depression. I had been receiving psychological treatment since middle school. It started off mild but got worse and worse over time. In fact, the school counselor had once called John. She told him that Lily showed signs of severe depression and urged him to take me to a public hospital for further evaluation. John had been overseas at the time, meeting an important client. After listening for a few minutes, he hung up on the counselor. How could Lily have depression? She was well-fed and well-clothed, attending the best school in the city. It wasn't like she was being abused. She was just like Sarah, overly dramatic and always seeking attention. Later, John sent his assistant to attend the parent-teacher meeting on his behalf. He asked around, and all of my classmates said I was cheerful and outgoing. Not only did I never show sadness, I was the first to comfort others when they were down. This only confirmed for John that my depression was just a trick. But now, faced with pages and pages of therapy records, his hands were trembling. The same word kept appearing in all those long conversations. Dad. From the first page to the last, it was the only consistent terms. Doctor, you're so smart. Can you help me figure out what I did wrong to make Dad hate me so much? This was Lily, just starting middle school, during her first visit to the counseling office. The cuts on my wrist are from a ruler, yes, not a knife. I still want to live, okay? But recently, I've had these thoughts that someone like me, who no one likes, wouldn't be missed if I died. This was Lily in her first year of high school. Research suggests that during adolescence, self-identity formation relies heavily on parental influence. In other words, a child hated by their parents may come to believe they are inherently worthless, and, in turn, start to hate themselves. John's fingers shook as he turned to the last page. The final entry was from my senior year of high school, a week before my birthday. I've been taking my meds regularly, don't worry. I've always followed the doctor's orders. But it seems like ever since I started, I can't feel sadness, but I also can't feel joy. It's so awful. I had a dream about Dad taking me to an amusement park. It was such a good dream, and I thought I'd be happy. But maybe because of the meds, I realized I couldn't feel any happiness at all. What a waste of a good dream. Did Dad ever take me to an amusement park? I'll answer that next time. Haha. John put down the therapy records. He was silent for a long time before he turned off the lights, letting the darkness envelop him completely. He sat there in the darkness, tears dripping onto the records. Eventually, he covered his face, sobbing uncontrollably. Of course not. Of course he had never taken me to an amusement park. But on WeChat, I had seen pictures of him taking Michael to Disneyland. They posted a 9-photo grid, each picture filled with bright sunshine, father and son smiling, surrounded by Winnie the Pooh, Mickey Mouse, and Snow White. Fireworks lit up the night sky. It was the happiest place in the world. And I, even until my death, had never been to Disneyland. John finished packing my belongings. There wasn't much. The closet seemed big, but it was mostly empty. 4 school uniforms, 2 for winter, 2 for summer. 1 down jacket, a few sports t-shirts and pants, Socks rolled into small balls, neatly arranged, no dresses, no hairpins. It was clear the owner of this wardrobe wasn't into dressing up. Indeed, a girl who loathed herself could never appreciate her own beauty. Finally, John found a doll at the bottom of the wardrobe. A doll in a pink dress. The light pink ruffled dress was old, with faded edges, but it was clean. The hair was neatly combed, soft and pretty. It was the only gift Lily had ever received from her father in her 18 years of life. She had treasured it, keeping it from elementary school to middle school to high school, from the dorm to home, always bringing it with her. John held the doll tightly. Suddenly, he remembered the first time he saw Lily. She was only 3 months old, barely bigger than this doll. She looked at him with innocent eyes, just beginning to understand the world. And he had turned away coldly, not even giving her a hug. Now all he wanted was to give his daughter a hug. But in his arms, there was only a cold doll. Rachel noticed that John was starting to act strangely. She often woke up in the middle of the night to find John sitting motionless beside her, staring out the window. "I dreamed of Lily," he murmured. "I dreamed that I took her to an amusement park." During board meetings, he started to drift off frequently, and the executives began to protest, claiming that John was no longer fit to continue as CEO. So he stepped down. Rachel was anxious. She knew that asking too directly would provoke John's resentment, but with his silence, she had to ask how he planned to distribute his shares and assets. John replied calmly, "Donate it all in Lily's name." That was when Rachel found out that John had set up a fund named Lily. This charity fund was dedicated to helping all children in need, whether they were struggling financially and unable to continue their education, suffering from a toxic home environment, or victims of abuse or bullying. The fund employed professionals from various fields to provide the children with the help they needed. Rachel's worst fear had come true. Lily was dead, and the things John hadn't given her in life, he now felt that no amount could be enough after her death. Out of desperation, Rachel wrote a tearful post online, trying to use public opinion to remind John that he had a wife and a son. Lavishing most of his wealth on a deceased person was such a disregard for his family. However, Rachel didn't expect that, within just a few days of her post, people would dig up all the past dirt. The narrative did not go her way, quite the opposite, in fact. "Ms. Lewis keeps calling Sarah a homewrecker, but why do I feel like you're the real third party? No matter what tricks Sarah pulled, Mr. Miller must have been willing, right? Who else is to blame for the child being born?" Regardless of who came first, Sarah and John had a marriage license, didn't they? That makes them a legally married couple. If I remember correctly, right after Sarah died, her body barely cold, Mr. Miller announced he was back together with Ms. Lewis. Those who loved gossip back then may have aged out of it, but we didn't forget. Agreeing with the above, Rachel has always been the other woman, hasn't she? After John married Sarah, didn't she also have a scandal with some foreign tycoon? She only returned home because the tycoon's wife was too formidable. Honestly, Mr. Miller should get a paternity test. That son might not even be his. And so, Rachel's career in entertainment came to an end. With more and more dirt being unearthed, she faced total disgrace. John never returned home. In truth, if Rachel and Michael had lived frugally, the assets John left behind would have allowed them to continue living comfortably for a long time. But Rachel couldn't accept this outcome. She poured large sums into investments recommended by friends only to lose it all. So she convinced herself that it must be Lily's restless spirit messing with the family's feng shui, and she hired one master after another to exorcise me. The masters all had their own methods, but the one thing they had in common was that they accepted large payments. None of it worked. I watched my translucent soul, realizing that I still couldn't leave this world. Perhaps the master's spells and my system just operated on entirely different wavelengths. Rachel cried every day, telling Michael, "Everything I do is for you." Michael's voice was icy. "Oh, please. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess." Rachel was stunned. She had worked so hard to secure a future for her son, never imagining that one day she would hear such hatred in his voice. Michael truly hated Rachel. Of course, he also hated John. This boy, spoiled all his life, believed that everything his parents provided him was his by right. "Give me money," he demanded, holding out his hand to Rachel. Rachel wept, saying, "We have no money left." Michael grew impatient. He kicked Rachel in the stomach and rummaged through the wardrobe for the last 2 rings, then took them to be pawned. He used the money to visit the most hidden part of a nightclub. What joy, only in this brief stupor, could he escape his problems and return to his former fantasy life. I floated through the nightclub, studying the worm that had grown from the honey jar of indulgence, as the strobe lights intermittently lit up the space. Michael drank heavily, eventually passing out on the couch, the last of his money already squandered. In fact, alcohol couldn't have cost that much. There were old needle marks on his arm. The latest one was on his neck. That night, the police raided the nightclub, arresting everyone, except for Michael. By the time they found him, he was lying on the couch, his nose and mouth blocked by vomit, no longer breathing. John didn't know about his son's death. His phone had been off for a long time. He was in the mountains, fasting and meditating, perhaps seeking inner peace. He offered incense and prayed before Buddha. He prayed that in the next life, I could be his daughter again, and he would make it up to me. The system seemed touched. It looked at John's gaunt face and earnest prayers and said, "Your father truly regrets what he did. In the next life, would you want to be his daughter again?" I smiled and said, "No way." But the system tried its best. You know how stories like these go. Families, no matter how chaotic things get, always end with reconciliation. Everyone sits down together for a joyful reunion dinner. That's the standard ending for all family dramas. I don't particularly want to criticize such an ending. On the contrary, I understand it. People say they want to cut ties with their families, but in reality, perhaps only 1 in 10,000 can truly do so. The desire for love is a fundamental human trait, especially for teenagers who haven't yet stepped into the wider world. To a child, parents are everything. To bring about this happy ending, the system gave John a dream. In the dream, John heard a low, electronic voice. It explained everything, why my death was inevitable if he didn't come to celebrate my birthday. For the first time in years, John wept uncontrollably in his sleep. It really was me who killed her. "Your daughter does not blame you," the electronic voice said. "Would you like to see her one last time?" The news of the Miller Group CEO's suicide made headlines. John had leapt from the cliffs of Yunshan. The once mighty CEO spent his final days in a small storeroom at a mountain monastery without any family or friends by his side, living in extreme simplicity. The only decoration was a doll in a pink dress. I saw John's soul. He was walking towards me. His arms were open, tears streaming down his face. "Lily, it's Dad." Throughout my long life, I had dreamed of this scene countless times. In my dreams, I would run towards that embrace, feeling safe, thinking to myself, how wonderful it is to be a child loved by her father. But when I woke up, all I had was my phone, empty, without a single reply. So I took a step back and turned away. I heard John ask the system, his voice desperate, "Why? Why can't I catch up to Lily?" The system was silent for a long time before finally answering him. "Because your daughter doesn't want you to catch up. She has grown up now. And if she doesn't want to, you can never hold her back again." I smiled. So that's it. I ran forward faster and faster. No looking back, no reconciliation. If I kept running ahead, I would eventually meet people who truly loved me. The world ahead grew wider and wider. Finally, a bright white light engulfed me, and I saw my form finally fade into transparency. "Goodbye, John. Goodbye, Lily." Later, John saw Lily once more. He begged the system to let him see how Lily was doing. The system agreed, but the cost was that John's soul would dissipate entirely. John agreed, and so he really did see Lily in the new world. She had her hair in pigtails, wearing overalls, eating a milk ice cream bar. The moment she saw him, she cried out in surprise. "Daddy!" She ran towards him. Tears welled in John's eyes, and he opened his arms. He had never felt so excited. He was finally going to hold his daughter. But in the next moment, Lily ran right through him. She ran into the arms of the man behind him, who lifted her up with a smile. He was a tall, burly man, wearing a chef's uniform, his face covered in grease and sweat. But Lily didn't mind at all. She happily smeared ice cream on his face, giving him a mustache. Daddy's a big kitty now. The man chuckled and lifted Lily onto his shoulders. All right, let's go home. What does Lily want to eat? Daddy will cook it. John stood there, stunned, and followed them home. It was a very small house, deep in an alleyway. The kitchen didn't even have a range hood. The air was thick with the scent of cooking. But Lily sat on a small stool doing her homework, her smile so bright. John had never seen such an expression on her face in all her previous life. I have good news, Lily. Daddy got promoted to head chef, and my salary increased. Summer break is next week. How about Daddy takes you to Disneyland? Lily cheered in excitement. But that's not all. Ta-da! Look what I have. John watched as the man pulled out a gift like a magician, holding it up for Lily. A doll in a pink dress. Lily was overjoyed. She took the doll and rushed into her bedroom. There was a cheap wooden cabinet there, and Lily opened the door. John froze. Inside were many dolls. Some wore red dresses, some white, others in biker gear with sunglasses. So she didn't just like pink. He realized then that he had never really known her. That was John's final thought. In the next moment, a gust of wind blew, and his soul scattered into the chilly northern breeze. Lily seemed to sense that someone was watching her. She turned around, but the room was empty. Whoever it was must have left. She shook her head and carefully brushed the hair of the doll in the pink dress before placing it among the other dolls. In her future life, she would receive many, many more gifts.